you, Madam President and High Representative. Back in May, at the last plenary, you and I, you might recall, had a brief exchange about the problem of the mislabelling of settlement goods. And I raised this question with you on what could the EU customs authorities do about the fact that so many settlement goods are presented as made in Israel. And you replied, you said that exports from Israel are difficult to prevent in circumstances where there's circumvention, unless we go after the suspension of trade with Israel as a whole. So what has happened since then is that Global Echo have published further evidence of widespread mislabelling of settlement goods presented at EU customs authorities as made in Israel. So of 5,900 shipments that arrived in the EU, 17% contained settlement goods, far in excess of what has been reported thus far. So the question is, can we honestly deal with the question of settlement goods without first dealing with the question of the association agreement? The sequencing is really crucial here, and I think it's very clear that expansion of settlements are unlawful and we must stop supporting settlers through trade. Thank you.
Maybe there is a peace deal between the US and Iran. Maybe not. We don't know. Maybe we're almost back where we were before all of this started. But things are much worse. It's very uncertain because Israel doesn't think it's part of the peace deal. And so the peace won't hold. Israel's bombing of residential areas in Lebanon won't remove Hezbollah, and it will weaken the Lebanese government. Israel violates the peace deal in Gaza. 1.7 million people live in tents amongst rubble and ruins. The health situation is disastrous. Hamas holds people in its iron grip. Israel's illegal actions in the West Bank are at a historical level. We should have sanctioned Israel many years ago, and it's time to act now.
Israel said that it was not involved in the ceasefire agreement and will still be bombing in Gaza and Lebanon. Now, I don't really know what the point of this debate is. We come to the podium again and again to hear the same empty words. We are debating the situation in the Middle East today. Who today can even talk about appeasement with any kind of credibility? The EU is politically and economically complicit with the genocidal state of Israel. Who can seriously talk about justice while at the same time arming Israel, maintaining the association agreement, placing conditions on human rights, welcoming representatives from Israel who are violating human rights? European leaders are complicit, and all of those who are with them are betraying those who have elected us. The truth is very clear. You cannot improve the situation as long as you protect and legitimize Israel. It's about speaking out against the apartheid regime of Israel. Thank you.
In Palestine, on a daily basis, Christians, Catholic nuns, priests, even bishops are being harassed, are being attacked, physically attacked, humiliated. That is regular. That is not something exceptional for the Jewish community. And this is the problem that this peace agreement, whatever it is not going to solve. You can solve it only by restoring the independence and security of Christians in Jerusalem and in the whole region. And the Jewish state is not going to take responsibility for it. We have to take this responsibility. Thank you.
Madame la Vice-Présidente,
Madam Vice President, it's important to say things clearly sometimes. The American president can shout about diplomatic victory, but nobody has been duped. The peace agreement simply takes us a step back, paying tolls on the Straits of Hormuz, for example. And what have you achieved? There's thousands of dead, massive destruction, the global economy has been held hostage. It is a very vague agreement that Europe is supposed to support, and Israel is already violating. And what are we doing to stop Israel's actions? We cannot sanction the genocide in Gaza, the occupation of the West Bank or the Lebanon. We cannot sanction a supremacist minister, stop products from the colonized areas coming into the EU, unable to stop war crimes in this country. History is watching, and it will remember the lack of action from the EU and the member states.
Madam High Representative, colleagues, this is an important member. The most powerful armies in the world, US and Israel, haven't been able to beat Iran. They've managed to stand up to illegal react, and there's a chance for peace. That could give an opportunity for life, a quality life, good life, for the people in the Middle East. That's positive. Who wants to sabotage that? The genocide state of Israel, who wants to continue the war. We want to invade Syria. We'll stay there. We'll invade Lebanon. We'll stay that. We're having ethnic cleansing in Gaza and the West Bank. We can stop that. We have the power to stop Israel by sanctioning, by saying, we'll stop trading with you, you won't have the privileges, you won't have the arms or the money from Europe. If you do that, tomorrow the Middle East will be a better place. Thank you.
Dear colleague Bottinger, there is a blue card by colleague Sieper. Yes? Yeah. 253, please.
Thank you, dear colleague, for accepting my blue card. I was wondering, do you really think that sanctions would stop Israel? Would it really stop Israel from producing weapons? Would it really stop Israel from waging war? And is this a promise that we should give to our citizens, that we can stop a state that is perpetrating violations of international law with sanctions?
Mr. Sieper, I am shocked. You support sanctions on Russia, right? What else do I need to say? I mean, your hypocrisy, it's so horrible. So what are you actually saying? I don't mind that the Israelis bombed the Palestinians. I don't mind that they bombed the Lebanese. This is hypocrisy. Once it is about measures against Israel, it's like, oh no, I'm going to look elsewhere. Yes, we can stop Israel if we stop funding it. 30% of their trade is with the European Union. Put the sanctions on that. Put them.
There is a follow-up question now, please.
Actually, Mr. President, as Mr. Botenga attributed a certain opinion to me in his reply, I would do a personal statement instead of a reply on the blue card, which fortunately within the rules of procedure allows me to elaborate a little bit more than just with the 30 seconds.
But please go ahead then.
Thank you very much. Dear colleague, I think you missed. First of all, I'm definitely not in favor of Israel committing war crimes, crimes against humanity, against the Palestinian people. And just for your information, I just met with young Palestinian and Israeli activists before this debate to discuss exactly that, a peaceful solution, a peaceful future for both people, both states. I just want to make this very clear. Also, I would be in favor of sanctioning Israel. So I'm not saying that sanctions are not a good idea or are not appropriate in this situation. I'm just saying you said we need to sanction Israel and this is our solution. I don't think that is the solution. In the same way as it is not the solution for Russia. If we would have only sanctioned Russia, the war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine would be over in Russia's favor already. I think we need to think about more than that. I think we need to think about things like reforming, for example, the UN Security Council, as the UN, as my colleague Abir said, stopped serving everyone equally. So I'm sorry that you felt attacked by my statement and my question. I was more asking, do you have any better idea than sanctions to stop what you...
Thank you. And as it was a personal statement, there is no reply to that, so thank you.
So saying things as they are is very important, and you have to call things by their name, and that's why we have to call what's taking place, apartheid, what's taking place in Israel. It's very, very clear. So I think it would be good if this would be said publicly, for example, in this particular parliament, because in this distortion of reality is something which is extremely harmful, and it undermines our credibility. And I think we have to really make it clear that the High Representative can only express herself through certain channels, if you like, and through, of course, the agreements that have been adopted. That's why we need somebody who can really say things as they are. To expressing opinions is there's no problem about her expressing herself with regard to Russia, but it seems that there is a mincing of words in the case of Israel. Thank you.
Madam President, High Representative, Madam Kaya Kallas. Dear colleagues, the announced deal between the United States and Iran is being presented as a possible opening for peace and stability in the Middle East. But Europe must not confuse an agreement with peace, and it must not confuse diplomacy with weakness. If the European Union wants to play a serious role after this deal, it must begin by naming the real obstacles to peace with political clarity. Very important, on 5th of August 1980, Yasser Arafat, leader of the PLO, made the following statement. Peace for us means the destruction of Israel. We are preparing for total war, a war that will last for generations. We will not rest until the day we return to our home and until we destroy Israel. End of quote. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the root of the problem in the Middle East. It is called terrorism. It is called hatred, and it is called Hamas, it is called Hezbollah, it is called Muslim Brotherhood. Peace requires Hamas to be disarmed, Hezbollah to be declared terrorist in its entirety and disarmed, and the Muslim Brotherhood to be considered as a terrorist movement. And the financing of structures that live off the destruction of Israel must be cut off. Without that, no peace deal can work in the region. So yes, Europe should support serious efforts to reduce tensions, but support cannot mean naivety, or it means conditionality, transparency and enforcement. Peace will not be born from submission to terror. Peace will not be born from lies. Peace will begin when Europe says, not one more euro, not one more excuse, not one more inch of legitimacy for those who live off the destruction of some countries. That is the first step towards peace, and that is Europe's duty. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, dear High Representative, 2 weeks ago in the West Bank, Sam, a 7-year-old Palestinian baby, was shot in the face by an Israeli soldier. He's dead, and almost no one is speaking his name. Sam is dead because impunity in Israel and the occupied territories has made the lives of Palestinian children expendable. Where soldiers and settlers kill without consequences, another Sam is only a matter of time. I wish I could stand here and tell you I'm proud, but I'm not. I'm ashamed, as a member of Parliament, that we failed to prevent and to punish these crimes. I'm ashamed, as a politician, that there is no justice and barely a complaint raised about it. I'm ashamed as a mother that a 7-month-old baby can be shot in his mother's arm. And I'm ashamed as a human being that we ignore the cries for help. So let's be courageous. Let's stop looking away. We must ban trade with Israel settlements, and we must expand humanitarian aid for the more than 3 million Palestinians who are dependent on it in Gaza and the West Bank. We owe it to some. Thank you very much.
Honesty is the only way out, dear colleagues, so let's be honest. With Iran, there is a deal that they will start negotiating a deal. The Strait of Hormuz, which was open before the war, might reopen. In return, the Iranian regime gets sanctions relief and access to frozen assets while they continue to kill their own people. In Gaza, we have a ceasefire that is no ceasefire. In the West Bank, violent settlers are burning down what remains of the possibility of a two-state solution. Beirut is being bombed. This is the madness you get when no one cares about international law anymore. And civilians pay the price in Gaza, Israel, Lebanon, and beyond. And Europe remains painfully divided. Defending international law as we always have. That was Germany's bid during its campaign for the Security Council. No surprise it failed. But why not prove it now, at least in the European Council, Chancellor Merz, by applying international law consistently, sanction ben-gvir and Smotrich, stop violent settlers from profiting from privileged access to the European market, and keep the sanctions on Iran for as long as this brutal regime remains in power. International law was not written for times of harmony. It was written precisely for moments like this.
Yesterday, the EU Observer reported that as far back as 2017, the then Commission top lawyer was very clear. EU was legally entitled to suspend cooperation with Israel, such as Horizon Europe and Erasmus Exchange, due to Israel's violations of international law. Almost 10 years and the EU has refused to act. We have witnessed a genocide in Gaza, the annexation of the West Bank, entrenchment of apartheid policies, racialised capital punishment, 1,000 Palestinians killed since the ceasefire, and in the first half of 2026, 88 attacks against Christians and Christian holy sites, and not to mention the 1 million displaced civilians in Lebanon. Yesterday, again, the Foreign Affairs Council took no action because of some member states. So, with all due respect to the German government, we are tired of hearing about your sensitivities. A heinous genocide against Jewish people perpetrated by an earlier generation cannot be used to justify an Israeli genocide against Palestinians. Your obstruction is making us all complicit. And finally, I want to raise the issue of a ban on settlement goods and services. Because where is Maros Sefcovic? Where is the proposal from the Commission based on Article 207 of the treaties? This is the bare minimum that we should be doing. The ICJ confirmed trade with the settlements is illegal. Now we need the Trade Commissioner to turn up, do his job and ban this illegal trade.